morning. The presentation is the windows in the Basilica of St. Cyril and Methodius, Villa Sacred Heart, Danville, Pennsylvania. I am Sister Clotilda, a member of the Congregation of the Sisters of St. Cyril and Methodius. The windows in the Basilica of St. Cyril and Methodius are a unique creation. Mosaic in type, their craftsmanship recalls the famous windows of the Middle Ages. In them are eloquently expressed both spiritual truth and natural beauty. The penetrating light imparts to the colors its own degree of intensity. Once light, once dark, now bright, now deep, at once glorious, and again somber. An inspiring symbol may be read in the colors. Red speaks of love and sacrifice, blue of truth and contemplation, gold of purity and heavenly beauty. Rose window above the main altar. The Lamb, representing St. John's vision of the 144,000 who follow the Lamb. A crown, symbol of life everlasting. A cross, representing the renunciation of self. Take up your cross. A dove flying upward, figure of soul responding to Christ's invitation, come follow me. Rose window to the main altar's left. The vow of obedience represented by the sunflower. The vow of chastity represented by the lily. The Book of Rules. Vow of poverty symbolized by an empty horn. Rose window to the main altar's right. The stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments. An open purse, figure of almsgiving. A honeycomb, symbol of fasting. A censer, figure of prayer, the keynote of religious life. The lancets. The Old Law depicts in the symbols of the 4 major prophets, 2 lions, Daniel, a building, Ezekiel, a well, Jeremiah, a saw and pincers, Isaiah. The New Law is depicted in the symbols of the 4 evangelists. A young man, St. Matthew. A lion, St. Mark. An ox, St. Luke. An eagle, St. John. Rose window in the choir loft. The oak, a symbol of fortitude. The scales, symbol of justice. A serpent, symbol of prudence. A compass and a rule, symbol of temperance. The choir loft consists of 2 smaller lancets dedicated to saints whose names are connected with sacred music. On the left is a portrait of Saint Cecilia, considered patroness of sacred music. On the right is a portrait of Saint Gregory, founder of Gregorian chant, dictating to a scribe his inspired hymns. Above him is a scroll with the legend, Vigio Sancti Gregori, Vision of Saint Gregory. The large panel depicts this vision, Holy Mother Church holding open her cloak as a refuge and protection of all classes of people. This window is dedicated to Pope Pius XI and Bishop McDevitt, during whose administrations the community made rapid progress. Reading down, a ship, symbol of the Church. A portrait of Pope Pius XI. Pope Pius XI's coat of arms. Saint Philip Neri, patron saint of Bishop McDevitt. Bishop McDevitt's coat of arms. Window of our Lord. This window portrays the life of our Lord. The two rose medallions show a chalice and a host, symbols of the sacrifice of the Mass. A cross entwined with the instruments of the Passion, symbols of our redemption. Reading from the top down, the middle lancet shows Jesus the Good Shepherd, zealous for the salvation of mankind. Christ, the King of heaven and earth. His aureole consists of symbols of the four evangelists, whose Gospels give a vivid picture of Christ's life and teachings. Jesus, the carpenter of Nazareth, faithful to common labor. Left lancet. Christ's birth in Bethlehem, his first coming. Christ at the age of 12 among the doctors in the temple. Christ blessing children. Christ pointing out the wideness of the harvest. Christ at prayer on the mountainside. The right lancet. The Last Judgment, Christ's third coming. Institution of the Holy Eucharist, Christ's second coming. Jesus healing the sick, model in performing the corporal works of mercy. Jesus teaching the multitudes, model for a teaching community. Christ in the house of Simon, model in social life. The border around each lancet consists of an alteration of two symbols of Christ, the fish and the Cyril, with the inscription IC XC Nika, Jesus Christ the Victor. Window of Our Lady. The two rose medallions portray the moon with the text Pulchra ut luna, beautiful as the moon. The sun with the text Electa ut sol, singled out as the sun. The middle lancet reading down, a house with 7 pillars. The text reads, Sapientia edificavit, wisdom built herself a house, representing Mary as full of grace. A full-size figure of Mary under the title of the Immaculate Conception, particularly venerated by the Sisters of St. Cyril Methodius and the Patroness of the United States. 3 generations portrayed by an old woman, a young woman, and a child. The text reads, Beata me dicen omnes generationes, all generations shall call me blessed. The left lancet, an olive tree with the text, Oliva speciosa, fair as the olive tree. The United States Bishops' Sixth Council of Baltimore, 1846, named the Immaculate Conception as the patroness of the United States. An inset shows Mary standing on a map of the United States. A gate with the text, Porta Caeli, Gate of Heaven. Presentation of Mary in the temple by her parents, St. Joachim and St. Anne. Mary's life of prayer and study is symbolized by the harp and scroll. A vase with the text, Vas insigne devotionis, outstanding vessel of devotion. The right lancet, a lily among thorns with the text, Sicut lilium inter spinas, as a lily among thorns. Slovaks in national costume making a pilgrimage in honor of Our Lady, Mother of Sorrows, revered patroness of Slovakia. A fountain with the text, Fons signatus, a fountain sealed. An academy student prays the rosary before a statue of Our Lady. A garden having its gates securely locked with the text, Hortus conclusus, a garden enclosed. The border consists of an alteration of dove and lily. This window is dedicated to Pope Pius XII and Bishop George Leach, during whose administrations the Basilica was built. Reading down, the seal of the Diocese of Harrisburg. Portrait of Pope Pius XII. Pope Pius XII's coat of arms. Saint George, patron saint of Bishop Leach. Bishop Leach's coat of arms. This window portrays significant events of Slovak history. The left lancet traces the influence of Christianity on the Slovaks. The right one shows the development of their Christian literature, and the central one shows the scenes from the history of Slovaks in America. The two rose medallions present the seal of the United States. The Triple Crown Cross Tatra Mountains, symbol of Slovakia. The left lancet depicts Prince Pribina, who built the first Christian church on Slovak territory in the city of Nitra in 833, the first diocese of Slovakia. The ordinary of the diocese now is Cardinal John Chrysostom Kodets, who was ordained in 1950 during very tense times. A year later, he was chosen by the Vatican to be secretly ordained a bishop. Working in a chemical factory, then at night as a watchman and as a librarian, the young bishop exercised his episcopal duties in secret. Even his mother, for 10 years, didn't know he was a bishop until he was accused of high treason by the government and sentenced to 12 years imprisonment. During the Prague Spring, he, with others, was released from prison. It was at this time he traveled to Rome and had audience with Pope Paul VI, and the first time he donned on the episcopal robes given to him by the Pope, the robes Pope wore when he was Archbishop of Milan. Pope Paul II appointed him Bishop of Nitra in December 1989 and named him Cardinal in June of 1991. Secretly, Cardinal Kodets ordained over 160 priests and wrote 60 books, which are being translated into English. He is revered as a martyr for faith and a hero in the cause of freedom. Saint Cyril and Methodius arriving in Great Moravia in 863. Trnava, the Rome of Slovakia, and the center of religion and culture in Slovakia. It has numerous churches and schools, including the University of Trnava, dating to 1635. It is an important publishing center and seat of cultural societies. The Great Slav pilgrimage to Rome and the audience with Pope Leo XIII in the year of Jubilee, 1881. Notice the colorful Kroje, national costume. When ethnic groups go on a pilgrimage to Rome, they usually appear in their native costume. Pope Benedict XV ordaining 3 bishops for the dioceses in Slovakia in 1921. One of them was Bishop Jan Wetaszak, who attended Academy's first graduation in 1926 and who was imprisoned and cruelly tortured for his loyalty to the faith during the communist government. Reading up the right lenses. Slovak literature was born with the formation of the Slavic alphabet devised by Saint Cyril. There we see an inset of Saint Cyril and Methodius. Scholars Guild, Učenie Tovarstva, established in 1793 for the publication of books. Stefan Mojžes, Bishop of Banská Bystrica, founder of the Slovak Institute of Arts, namely Slovenská Matica, in 1861 for the promotion of educational and cultural pursuits. Andrej Radlinsky, as he distributes his popular prayer book Nábožné výlevy, published by the Society of St. Adalbert, which he found in 1876 to disseminate Catholic literature. While Monsignor Andrew Hlinka is portrayed at the top, while unjustly imprisoned, he modernized the Slovak Bible in a new translation. Reading up the middle lancet portrays the landing of the first Slovak immigrants in 1870. You can see the Statue of Liberty in the background. The second frame depicts St. Joseph Church in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, the first Slovak church in America, built in 1885. This present church was built on the foundation of the church stone structure built by Father Matthew Jankola, our founder, which was destroyed by fire March 1st, 1963, soon after undergoing renovation. The founding of the first Catholic Slovak Union, the Jednota, by Reverend Stephen Furdek in 1890. Reverend Gedloff, one of the founders with Father Furdek, and George Onda, first president of the Jednota. The founding of the first Slovak religious community in America, namely the Sisters of St. Cyril and Methodius, by Father Matthew Jankola in 1909, is seen in this section. The founding of the first Catholic Slovak high school, known as St. Cyril Academy in Danville, Pennsylvania, September the 11th, 1922. The border consists of an alteration of angels and the triple Tatra mountains of Slovakia. Window of community patrons. The two rose medallions depict the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Villa Sacred Heart is so named because the community took possession of the property in Danville during the month of June, month dedicated to the Sacred Heart. The Immaculate Heart of Mary, the community was found and trained in the principles of the religious life by the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Reading down to the left, Saint Methodius, our patron. Slovak priests, their parishes and schools, from which come our candidates, our students, and much of our revenue. Saint Alphonsus Liguori, whose redemptorist rule is the basis of the community's constitutions. The insignia of Slovak Catholic organizations to indicate the unfailing support given by them to the community through the years. Chief among them are the First Catholic Slovak Union, the First Catholic Slovak Ladies Union, the Pennsylvania Catholic Slovak Union, the Pennsylvania Slovak Catholic Ladies Union, and the Catholic Sokol. Saint Josephat, patron of Christian unity, the third objective of our community is to welcome and pray for the unity of all Christians, and the wish of our founder was to pray especially for the return of Slav dissidents to the unity of the Church. So Saint Josephat fits into this picture, for he worked untiringly for this cause. He was beaten and shot, then thrown into the Dvina River by those who opposed him, November the 12th, 1623. His mortal remains were recovered and buried in several secret places, since his enemies tried to find and destroy them, lest they become focus of pilgrimage and veneration. Since it was feared the Russians would claim the body during World War I, as their armies passed through the region, the remains were transported by train to Vienna and enshrined in the Ukrainian Church of St. Barbara. In the latter years of World War II, Vienna was heavily bombed, so the remains of this martyr were again in danger, since they were in the sector occupied by the Russians. The papal nuncio contacted Colonel Roman Numer, a chaplain and priest of Buffalo Diocese, who was chief of ecclesiastical affairs for the United States Army in Austria, to transfer the body to the American sector. 8 rugged Austrians, sworn to secrecy, placed the casket on a truck and covered it with coal. Together with these men, Colonel Neuer transported it, thus camouflaged, to the magnificent Cathedral of St. Stephen in Vienna. Since the Soviets were still feverishly searching for the saint's body, Pope Pius XII ordered that they be brought to Rome. Again, utilizing the good offices of Colonel Neuer and the American military command in Austria, the body of St. Josephat was flown to Rome. In 1950, with the official blessing of Pope Paul VI, they were enshrined for veneration in the Basilica Church in Rome. The right side, reading down, Saint Cyril, our patron. Slovak working men who gave unstintingly at great personal activities to promote the works of the community. Saint Michael the Archangel, patron saint of Bishop Michael Hoban of the Scranton Diocese, who was instrumental in obtaining the decree of approbation for our congregation. Slovak Catholic Press, always generous with its service in promoting the projects and interests of the community. Saint Matthew the Apostle, patron saint of Father Matthew Yankola, founder of the community. The middle section from the top. Saint Joseph, patron of the Universal Church and patron of happy death. Benedictine monks Andrew and Benedict, who became hermits in the Trenčín region of Slovakia, Andrew died a natural death, July the 16th, 1015, and Benedict was attacked by robbers who cast his body into the Vach River and recovered by devout Christians in 1018. They were buried in the chapel of St. Emrem at the castle of Nitra, First Diocese of Slovakia. St. Anthony of Padua, to whom have been entrusted the financial cares of the community. Mount St. Mary, now Marywood University, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Mother House of the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, where the community's first sisters were initiated into the religious life. St. Elizabeth, Queen of Hungary, noted for her charity to the poor. We Cyrilites also have a special concern for the poor and the needy. The border consists of alteration of angels carrying drones and a building signifying the heavenly Jerusalem. Window of the community history and works. The rose medallion to your left shows St. Pius X, the Pope who granted the decree of approval for the community in 1909. It was this Pope who issued the decree on frequent and daily communion, December the 20th, 1905. The rose medallion to your right shows Father Matthew Yankola, founder of our congregation. Reading down from the middle, Father Yankola with Dr. Alexander Djanishka, Father Andrew Paucho, and Father Joseph Murgash at a meeting to discuss the founding of a new religious community. The three priests supported Father Yankola, and with him drew up a petition to the Holy See for the approbation of our community. Statue of St. Anthony. People of Slovak parishes contributed generously to St. Anthony's treasury, which was established by Father Yankola to defray the expenses of educating the first members. Even today, we see a statue of St. Anthony in practically every Catholic church. The first three candidates entering Mount St. Mary's, now Marywood University, to begin their formation for the religious life. In the background, we see Immaculate Heart sisters welcoming them. One of them is Mother Cyril, General Superior of the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart. It was at the suggestion of Father Paucho that Father Yankola had recourse to Mother Cyril. Bishop Hoban, Bishop of Scranton, receiving the vows of the first members September 11th, 1909, considered the birthday of our congregation. The members were Mother Mary Mihalik, Sister Joseph Bartek, and Mother Emmanuel Pauli, lovingly referred to as the Three Marys. Opening of the first Slovak parish, namely that of Sacred Heart School in Wilkesboro. The day of the arrival of the sisters, Bishop Hoban, the parishioners, and the children were there to welcome them. It was a great day for the parish. The left side from the top. Here we see a sister in prayer. In addition to their various ministries, the sisters spend time in prayer, both communal and private. Bishop John Shanahan, 3rd Bishop of the Harrisburg Diocese, welcoming our sisters. In 1914, the Janota home was opened, and our sisters were asked to staff the orphanage. Bishop Shanahan took fatherly interest in the young community. However, it was not until after his death that the community was transferred from the Scranton Diocese to Harrisburg Diocese, August the 4th, 1917. It's interesting to know that the first bishop of the Harrisburg Diocese was Jeremiah, the brother of Bishop John Shanahan, and the second bishop was Bishop McGovern, who once had been pastor of St. Joseph's here in Danville. Here we see a sister preparing a class for First Communion. Here we see 2 graduates of St. Cyril Academy. A sister in a classroom, our first objective, namely education of youth. The right side from the top shows a sister at household duties. Sisters cook, clean, iron, scrub, etc., besides their assigned duties. Villa Sacred Heart, purchased during the Episcopal administration of Bishop Philip McDevitt, who also took great interest in the community. In the background may be seen an inset of the villa building and that of Bishop McDevitt. Originally, the property was named Castle Grove, then Bennett Mansion, now Villa Sacred Heart. A sister with the orphans. Our sisters took care of the orphans at the Janota home from May the 4th, 1914 to August 31st, 1969. The number of orphans was minimum when it closed. The total number of orphans ministered to during those years was 4,000, who to this day prove very loyal to the community. Here we see insets of the Basilica and Bishop George Leach, during whose episcopal administration the Basilica was built. The chapel of St. Cyril and Methodius was built after much planning and seeking advice. It was dedicated October the 17th, 1939 by His Eminence Dennis Cardinal Doherty of Philadelphia. On May the 18th, 1989, after being a chapel for 50 years, it was consecrated anew by Archbishop William Keeler and named Church of St. Cyril and Methodius. Few weeks later, June the 30th, 1989, it received the status of minor basilica. Here, a sister teaching a CCD class, one of our ministries. The border consists of a succession of angels holding burning lamps and dexter of the Academy escutcheon. This window portrays events from the lives of St. Cyril and Methodius. The left lancet is dedicated to St. Cyril, the right to St. Methodius, and the center to both. The rose medallions portray angels. heralds, missionaries, apostles, holding scrolls, one for Cyril, the other for Methodius. Reading up, the middle channel shows Cyril and Methodius receiving their mother's blessing before departing for Great Moravia. She was a Slav, their father a Greek, died when Cyril was 14 years old. Methodius was the oldest of 7 children, and Cyril was the youngest. They were born in Thessalonica, Methodius in 815, Cyril in 827. Cyril was baptized Constantine and Methodius Michael. It was customary for a monk to take a religious name beginning with the same letter as his baptismal name. Hence, Constantine became Cyril, and Michael took the name of Methodius. This section shows the saints arriving in Great Moravia in 863, and Prince Rastislav, who turned to Michael III, Emperor of Constantinople, for missionaries who had knowledge of the Slavonic language, welcoming them. Prior to their coming, German missionaries worked among the Slavs, but the language was a barrier. There is a legend that Michael III, when assigning Cyril and Methodius to the Slavs, said, "For you are Thessalonians, and Thessalonians all speak the Slavic tongue." It is important to know that once Cyril and Methodius undertook their missionary work in Great Moravia, they withdrew the allegiance from Constantinople and acknowledged the supreme ecclesiastical strong jurisdiction of Rome over their mission. Perhaps this is the reason why loyalty to the Holy See is characteristic of the Slavic people. Cyril and Methodius being received by Pope Hadrian II in 867. Because they introduced the Slavonic language in church services, they were criticized by the German clergy and believed it was a dangerous innovation and would lead to heresy and schism, since only Hebrew, Greek, and Latin were used. Hence, they were reported to Rome, and to Rome they went, bringing with them the relics of St. Clement, the 4th Pope, the liturgical books they translated into Slavonic, and their disciples. Their main reason for the journey was to obtain from the Roman See the establishment of an independent hierarchy for Great Moravia, the ordination of the disciples, and the approval of the Roman Slavonic liturgy. On their arrival in Rome, Pope Hadrian, accompanied by the clergy and the townspeople, met them. The procession proceeded to St. Peter's, where the relics were exposed for public veneration until they were placed in the Basilica of St. Clement. When time came to defend the use of the Slavonic liturgy, Cyril and Methodius met great opposition. The opponents stated that the inscription on the cross was in 3 languages. The Pope condemned such reasoning and called its supporters Palatists and Trilingualists, and approved the use of the Roman Slavonic liturgy. It was in the Basilica of St. Mary Major that the solemn approval was enacted when Pope Hadrian blessed the liturgical books and placed them on the altar. This was followed by Roman Slavonic liturgy offered by St. Cyril in the presence of the Pope and the bishops of Rome. For this reason, the Basilica of St. Mary Major is dear to all Slavs. Within its walls, for the first time, resounded Slava vo Vyšných Bogu, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Later on, Pope Hadrian ordained Methodius priest in St. Peter's and ordered the bishops who vehemently opposed the use of the Slavonic liturgy to ordain the disciples of St. Cyril and Methodius. It was at this time that Cyril and Methodius were ordained bishops. The trip to Rome was historically important and attracted considerable notice because relations between Rome and Patriarch Photius of Constantinople were so strained that in 867 open schism was imminent. Since there were few Greek scholars in Rome, the Pope had Cyril and Methodius translate many Greek documents, including those of Photius. Saint Cyril proclaimed the gospel to the Slavic people of Great Moravia. Pope Leo XIII, who in his encyclical Grande Munus in 1880 extols the virtues of Saint Cyril and Methodius and states, "Here in the city of Rome, they gave an account of the enterprise they had undertaken and replied to their accusers. Here at the tomb of St. Peter and St. Paul, they swore loyalty to the Catholic faith. Here they received episcopal consecration, together with a mandate to set up a center of Christian authority with due regard to the hierarchical distinctions. Finally, it was here that leave was obtained for the use of the Slavic language in the most hallowed portions of the liturgy." He also mentions that by their perseverance and their labors, the Slavic nations received the light of the gospel and were brought to national and civic cultures. Left Lancet. Reading up, the Left Lancet portrays Saint Cyril. Cyril as a librarian. Recognizing his outstanding talents, his father's friend had him enrolled in the imperial school attended by young Michael III, and which was the highest-ranking school in the country. After completing his studies, he was appointed librarian, a very important position in the famous church of Sancta Sophia, now a mosque in Constantinople. Later, he was appointed secretary to Patriarch Ignatius, but after a short while, he secretly left the Patriarch's palace and retired to a monastery on the Bosporus. After 6 months, he let himself be persuaded to return to Constantinople, where he became professor of philosophy at the imperial school where Photius, his former professor, was now his colleague. Cyril's mission to the Khazars, a Turkish Tatar nation. These Khazars were eager to debate Christian ideas and beliefs, so they sent envoys to Michael III with the message, "We desire your advice and ask for a learned man so that we might accept your religion if he overcomes the Jews and the Saracens in debate." Cyril and Methodius accepted the challenge. However, Methodius yielded the first place to Constantine, the philosopher. To reach the Khazars, the delegation crossed the Black Sea and went to Crimea. It was here the relics of St. Clement were discovered. Cyril composing the Slavonic alphabet. Before translating the liturgical books, Cyril had to invent an alphabet known as the Glagolithic. After his death, his disciples modified it and named it Cyrillic, which is used today in Russia, Macedonia, Serbia, and Bulgaria. When Cyril began translating the liturgical books into Slavonic, the first words were, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God," taken from the beginning of St. John's Gospel. Cyril, on his deathbed in Rome, bids farewell to his brother Methodius and exhorts him to return to that devout Slavic people in Great Moravia. Cyril died February the 14th, 869, at the age of 42, being a monk for only 50 days. Cyril never had an opportunity to perform duties of a bishop due to an untimely death. This is portrayed on the picture in our dining room. Methodius wears the mitre. Cyril holds it in his hand. Cyril's burial in Rome in the Basilica of St. Clement, whose relics he brought to Rome. Pope Leo XIII in Grande Munus states that his funeral was more of a triumphal procession than a traditional funeral procession. Many miracles occurred at his tomb. They inspired Rome to even greater regard for his sanctity, and the faithful often visited the crypt to pray to him. Right Lancet. Reading up, the Right Lancet portrays Saint Methodius. Saint Methodius retiring to a monastery. He was tutored in law by his father with the understanding that he would enter government service upon completing his studies. And so it happened. When the emperor heard of his competence, he appointed him administrator of a district in the Byzantine Empire where the majority of the inhabitants were Slavs. After some years, he resigned from this position and left for the Basilican monastery on Mount Olympus in Asia Minor in 853. Methodius makes a second long journey to Rome in answer to a summons from Pope John VIII in 880 to vindicate himself of the accusations made against him. Wishing, his opponent, also goes, hoping that Methodius will be deposed and he will be appointed Archbishop of Great Moravia. Methodius returns to Great Moravia after Pope John VIII was assured of his orthodoxy and who confirmed his appointment as Archbishop of Great Moravia and Papal Legate of all the Slavic nations, and who also renewed the approval of the Slavonic liturgy. This was a great disappointment to the Bavarian hierarchy. His episcopal see was in Velihad. His diocese included what today is Slovakia, Moravia, Western Hungary, and part of Yugoslavia. On his return, Methodius delivered the papal bull Industriae Tuae to Prince Svatopluk from Pope John VIII. In the meantime, Wishing had the papal bull falsified. In place of the name of Methodius, he had his inserted. When Methodius reported this to Rome, Pope John VIII assured him that no papal bull was given to Wishing. How this unpleasant occurrence was treated with Wishing is unknown because, in the meantime, Pope John VIII died and Pope Cyril V was elected, and the papal bull Industriae Tuae was not in the archives. Why? Because of the few of the bishops who opposed Methodius were assigned to the position in the papal curia and removed some of the documents of Pope John VIII pertaining to this era. Methodius instructing young men, forming a native clergy to continue the apostolate. Methodius delivering his last sermon before his death, after enduring injustice from the hands of German hierarchy, who opposed the use of the Slavonic liturgy and his appointment as archbishop and legate. He was bound in chains like a common criminal and condemned to prison in Bavaria, where he spent 2.5 years. When Rome learned of this situation, the Bavarian bishops were reproved and reminded they had no ecclesiastical or canonical decree to conduct a trial and did wrong by making Methodius suffer. At the intervention of Pope John VIII, Methodius was released from prison and returned to Moravia to assume his duties as archbishop. He died March the 6th, 885. Pope John Paul II, by his letter Egregiae Virtutis of December 30th, 1980, proclaimed Saint Cyril and Methodius co-patrons of Europe. The lancets are bordered with a succession of heralding angels. conclusion, Henry Lee Willett, the artist, writes the following about the windows. The guiding principle in designing and executing the windows of this chapel, now Basilica, was to procure windows which would be a complement to the architecture which surrounds them and an integral part of the wall space in which they are placed. So often churches have disregarded the true purpose of stained glass and thought of it as a mere picture painting, with the result that they turned the house of worship into a picture gallery. Stained glass is an entirely different medium and has an entirely different purpose in the decoration of a church. Therefore, for the inspiration of our windows, we have gone back to the stained glass in the cathedrals of Europe, where in the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries, stained glass was carried out by devout craftsmen who made windows that exemplified the full glory of stained glass because they realized the possibilities as well as the limitations of the medium. The iconography planned by the sisters was a distinct challenge to the artist. The subject matter is probably entirely different from that of any other windows in the world. Scenes starting with practically the earliest known history and continuing down to the present day seem to require windows designed in the earliest principles of stained glass, but expressed in a completely fresh and original manner. Instead of repeating stereotyped backgrounds and borders that have been used over and over again, the designs of the borders and backgrounds are not only entirely original in their conception, but symbolic and expressive of the medallions which they surround. All this was only made possible through the cooperation and the encouragement given by the mothers and sisters who never failed to appreciate all the efforts that were expended on the execution of the commission. Another feature about the windows which I think is truly distinctive is the fact that while they are in full color, the chapel is not dark and gloomy. His Excellency the Bishop cautioned us in the very beginning that the chapel must be kept light. I feel that we have accomplished this in our stained glass success in making the glass glow with life and treating the subject in such a manner as to glorify forever the moving story they tell. There is nothing in these windows to fade or decay, as must, alas, be the case with the most beautiful canvas or mural painting. The resplendent colors are embodied in the glass itself. Stained glass is very closely related to music. Henry Lee Willett, the artist.